Hi, Lynn WIlliams here. My name is Rainer Fusking. I'm calling you from Sweden now, and it's so great that you have some time to talk to me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Also, is it late there right now or what's
it's
happening?
7 p.m. Yeah.
Okay,
Did you have some lunch
I
already?
did. I'm good. I'm all good, ready to go.
Mhm. Uh, I mean, this year 2020 is obviously different. I think I start with this a little bit. How is your life as both as a soccer player and as a human? How does it have changed during this crazy year?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, mentally, I have had my ups and downs.
Mm,
Um, one day, especially when it first started, we were in quarantine and we didn't know when we were going to have a season or what anything
mm.
looked like. One day I'd be like, why am I doing this? And then the next day I'd be like, okay, Lynn, you're fine. And then the next day I'd be like, why am I doing this?
Exactly. That's it.
And it was like definitely an up and down battle. But you know, I I I have very supportive teammates and a very supportive family. The saddest part for me is that my boyfriend, my partner, lives in Australia, and right now their borders are closed. So if
Mm,
you're a citizen, you can't get out, and if you're not a citizen, you can't get in. So that's been the hardest part, that we haven't been able to see each other, and I don't know when I'm gonna see him, just
mm,
because everything is so up in the air. But just trying to keep a positive outlook on things. I
mm.
have health and I have my job still, and there's so many people that have been affected way worse than me. So I'm just trying to
Of
keep that
course.
in the front of my mind, that I'm still very blessed.
Mm. But apparently, you have to be very, very cautious now as a player to be
Yeah.
able to continue doing your job.
Yeah, definitely. We get tested regularly, twice a week, plus an extra one, depending on if you have a game or not.
Mm,
Um, and you can't go out to eat. Everything's ordered in, or you're cooking. I try not to go to the grocery store that much. I know that people think things are dying down a bit, but I think if we let up, that's when things are going to start back up again.
mm,
And I think we have a responsibility, especially when we're playing against opponents, to make sure that we're doing everything to make sure they are safe as well. So
mm,
um, so yeah, it looks a little bit different. I would say that it's not as exciting as a life, but it's still living life to its fullest ability right now.
mm. And we have to try to get through this period. Um, I think I wanted to start. If you think 20 years back when you were like 7 years old, and you were in you come from Fresno, California, and you grew up there. Do you remember how was it like to live there in that would
Yeah,
be like 20 years ago, 2000, the beginning of the
yeah.
2000s?
When I was seven, I probably thought it was the best place ever.
Mm,
I didn't really see the world yet. It was all about myself. No, when I was seven, actually, tragically, my uncle was in a football accident and
mm,
ended up being paralyzed from the neck down. So during that time, my family were really trying to navigate how to go about
mm,
uh, dealing with that. And he ended up living with us,
mm,
and seeing my parents, um, trying to take care of two little girls, but at the same time taking care of somebody who needed watching
mm,
24/7, really kind of changed and I think shaped my outlook on life, and
mm,
how, like I said before, somebody is always going to be worse off than you.
mm,
Anytime I have an injury now, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. At least I can still walk. I can still run. There's so many things I can still do, versus like
mm,
I physically saw my uncle go from being this incredible football player athlete to
mm.
someone who needed help 24/7, living in a wheelchair, couldn't do anything for himself. Um, so yeah, during that time of my life was actually, I think, very eye opening, and kind
Mm,
of really was the first step of like shaping who I was as a human.
mm. I didn't know that it was exactly 20 years ago. I read about this sad story about your uncle. Did that shape you? Did that make you grow up quicker than maybe other children who didn't have the same experience?
Yeah, maybe, it's kind of funny because I can't really speak to anybody else. I
Yeah,
can only speak to like what I
of
experienced.
course.
And I think I saw a lot earlier than most. Like I said, 24/7 we had a nurse
Mm,
in the home. I would help like suction out his mucus if because
mm,
he had no ability to like spit or anything. um I our family was struggling just emotionally.
mm,
I At the time I don't think I realized like financially, but now looking back I'm like that must have been a huge burden,
mm,
financially. And just to see, um, it being really hard, and me like seeing medical things really young and early, and then experiencing like a huge loss in our family. He ended up dying when I was
mm,
8. um, and experiencing that. But what I saw most and what I remember most is how our family came together. I saw how strong my mom and my
mm,
dad were to take him in, and just that we would do anything for family. And my dad is one of 8, and uh, every weekend we would have the whole family over just to be with him and
mm,
support him. Um, so it just kind of reassured and reminded me how important family is.
mm. I saw on your the sheet of Pepperdine University where you studied later in
Yeah.
life that your first role model was Wilma Rudolph.
Yeah.
How did that come? Because Wilma Rudolph was born way before you
Yeah.
were born, and way
I
before I
remember.
was, a couple of years before I was born, actually.
I
And who
know.
was Wilma Rudolph? Maybe we should tell some people who don't know her.
Yeah, she ran track,
Mm,
and then contracted polio, and they thought that she wouldn't be able to. She had braces on her legs.
mm,
She ended up like exceeding everybody's expectation. Won a whole
mm,
bunch of gold, in track and field, and she was my role model. I I ran track. I think everybody knows the story that like I ran track and played soccer, and um, up until a certain point, I didn't know which one I wanted to do.
mm,
I almost ended up going to college for track instead of soccer. Anyways, and so growing up, she was one of my big inspirations to be like, oh, well, if she can do it and she came over all this adversity, then I can do it. And I know it's not the same. I didn't necessarily have polo and have like braces on my legs, but I did
mm.
have a lot of injuries,
Oh
and
yeah.
I did have um, a lot of I wasn't being recruited a lot for like soccer and stuff. So I was like, if she can overcome these things, then I can overcome these things. And she had it way worse than I did. So keep pushing, Lynn, and you'll get there if you just keep fighting, and just keep your head down and do the work. And so she definitely became a huge um, inspiration and
Mm.
point in my life.
Did you have any soccer players that you looked up to when you were a kid?
Yeah, well, I definitely Mia Hamm. I think everybody looked up to
Mm,
Mia Hamm, especially being a forward at the time. I was like, oh, I want to be able to do all those things. I had all of her books, and she would always play with the boys, and I felt like I was one of those girls too, where I was always trying to like beat the boys and prove the
mm,
boys wrong. So she was, I would say, my biggest idol.
mm. And I think you met her later, didn't you?
I
I think I saw a picture on Instagram with you.
Yeah, I met her last year in person, and I, I was in Christina Lee, and I was the whole time trying to like be cool and act cool. I probably didn't happen, but I was like, oh
Mm,
my gosh, I definitely got butterflies, and it's like you're my idol.
mm. You were already a great soccer player during your middle school. That was Baird Middle School, and then Bullard High School, and then you said that you had some problems getting recruited by a college.
Yeah,
Um, why
yeah.
was that?
I think partially just being from Fresno,
Mm,
everybody is always like, Fresno's so small. And I'm like, well, it's not. There's like a 500,000 people that live there. It's huge. Um, but for some reason, I think the Central Valley gets overlooked when it comes to soccer talent.
mm,
You have a huge clubs down south, and you have huge clubs up north, but Fresno really
mm,
gets overlooked. So I played for a one team club. It was called the East Fresno Fusion,
Hmm.
and loved it. But we would always do a huge tournament where D1 schools go to. We would always be playing in like the Harvest Cup on the side. So
Hmm.
so yeah, like schools were seeing me. It was always like D2 and D3 schools, which is fine, but I always had aspirations of like, I know I'm good enough to go D1. But I was getting more letters to go and run track, and I was like, okay, well, maybe track is my calling. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. And then finally somebody, San Bernardino, referred me to Pepperdine,
Hmm.
and they came down and gave me a shot, gave me an opportunity, and I kind of just ran with it.
And I think I saw a video where your coach at Pepperdine said we went to Fresno. It's a 3-hour drive, or 4-hour drive, and then we didn't know who she was. And then the first pass that she did in that game, I knew that's her.
Yeah, he tells that story, and I blush every time.
Mm.
You know, like you said, they didn't know who I was.
Mm.
We used to play on this small field that wasn't even big enough to play a full soccer game on.
Mm.
Had like generator lights, and we were doing all these small technical things, and he was like, can we open up, he said to my coach at the time, can we just open up the game? And I think I just ran, and he goes, oh yeah, like she's the one. And I think he saw that I had enough athletic ability and enough soccer talent that he could work with.
Mm.
um, and so I would say that was the first person who like really took a shot on me to further my soccer
Mm.
career. You know, obviously my club coaches,
Mm.
they believed in me and anything, but he was the first person to be like, wow, we can work with her. We can work
Mm.
with
So you moved to Malibu, and I saw a video of, there's a beautiful drone video about Pepperdine University.
her.
I watched that last night, and I thought, my God, this looks like paradise,
Yeah.
this place.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to go if you've never been,
Mm.
but I was definitely spoiled and lucky. It's like the ocean,
Mm.
the highway, and then it's the school. And every
Amarillo Beach.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And the school overlooks the ocean. The soccer
Mm.
field overlooks all of the like baseball field and the athletic department. So yeah, I was spoiled. I got a really great view for 4 years.
Mm. And it wasn't so far away from home. You could still go home.
Yeah, so that was something that was pretty important to me when looking for colleges. I was lucky enough that it ended up working out for me, but you know, growing up, I was pretty picky. I was like, I don't like the cold. I don't like this
Mm.
being super rainy. I want to stay in California, but I want to be far enough from home where I on my own and get to go on my own. But if I need or won't go home, I still have the ability to do that. So Pepperdine was only 4 hours, 3.5, 4 hours
Mm.
away. Um, and I thought it was amazing.
Mm.
I was able to do that. So
And but then in at Pepperdine, would a beautiful surrounding, horrible things happen to you all the time. Not all the time, but you had horrible injuries, and the worst maybe with your elbow, where your
yeah,
coach said it wasn't broken, it was shattered, it was destroyed.
yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, so my career is been like riddled through with injuries. Sometimes if I actually take a second and look back, I'm pretty impressed with myself to be able to continue to push and that I've even made it here. But yeah, my first year I had a quad injury that I thought was never going to heal. Next year I tore my meniscus, played on that until I could get it fixed. And then the next year I was feeling good and I tore my labrum in my hip.
Hmm.
And they were like, well, we got to take 6 weeks off. And I was like, I don't have 6 weeks to take off right now. And then 2 days later, after finding out that news, I shattered my elbow in a terrible collision. I it ended up dislocating and shattering, and that was really tough. It was hard. I have 3 plates and like 16 screws still in there now. I needed a whole reconstruction. And then 6 weeks later, I ended up going in and having my labrum repaired. So for
Hmm.
that year, I was bedridden for a week. I couldn't really I needed crutches to move my leg, but I couldn't use crutches because of my arm. I really spiraled into like this depression.
Mm.
I, went from somebody who's being very active and very happy and being able to do everything to somebody who I would get exhausted going from my bed to take a shower. It was like, I need to go lay back down. I'm like mentally exhausted. I'm physically exhausted. Um, and, um, and I think that's what was the hardest part. The doctor said, your elbow looks like you've been in a car accident.
Mm.
And I, like this, so everything, like my shoulder was swollen, my back was swollen. Um, and, I think anybody who's been through injury knows that even though when you get back and you're part of a team, you're not really part of the team because you're off on the side of the whole time. And so I felt like I was always on the side. And and so then, like I said, I kept going into this deeper depression. I started going out more, probably wasn't doing the right things. And I was like, is this worth it? Like, my body
Mm.
clearly is trying to tell me you're doing something wrong. You're pounding on me too much. And I was like, well, is this really worth it? I want to be able to have kids and run around and have fun one day. And luckily I had a great support system around me. And I had one friend that was like, Lynn, what are you doing? You're better than this. And in that moment, it took me back to my uncle and
Mm.
being like, he could do this. He went through something way worse than you did. And he fought there all the way into the end. And so stop feeling sorry for yourself, get
Mm.
on with it, and let's go and let's see actually what you can become. And that, I think the rest is history. I definitely had a couple more injuries, like even after that and into my professional career, but I think my mentality was much different. And so I would say that huge injury was one that was like, Lynn, if you can get through this, you can get through anything. And so that's how I do it with every injury. I'm like, it's gonna be fine. I'm a pro now.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. When did you decide to become a professional? Was that in Pepperdine?
Oh yeah, at Pepperdine, definitely. Like I said before, I really wanted to play soccer in college, but nobody was recruiting me, so I thought I wasn't good enough. And then my
Mm.
first year at Pepperdine, going into that year, I was like, I just want to be fit enough. I just want to see the field. Ended up being a starter. Ended up being the WCC Freshman of the Year. And I think in that year, I realized, I was like, oh, I was right. Like, I am good enough to do this. And then I went on after my freshman year and played at the Pally Blues in the off summer, and I was doing well there.
Mm.
And it was another reminder, like, oh, I'm good enough to do this. And this
Mm.
was before there was the league, so it was like actually all the pro. I think in that moment I was like, this is something I want to do.
Mm.
This is what hope. At the time there was no league, but I was like, this is what I want to do. I would need to make the national team because at that time that was all that there was. And I obviously took a roundabout way of getting there, but
Mm.
yeah, in my freshman year.
But there's an incredible competition in the United States. I mean, this must be the greatest competition in all the countries where women play soccer.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think that there's something to be said about that, and I think that's why this country has performed well in the past and going forward. And because the competition level is so high, and you're always fighting for a spot, you're always
Mm.
somebody's always knocking on the door right behind you. And I think for a long time I thought it was national team or bust.
Mm.
And when I did get my chance to be on the national team at first, I was holding on so tightly and being like, I finally made it,
Mm.
that I was afraid. I was afraid to make a mistake. I was afraid to lose it, that all I did was make mistakes. And
Mm.
so for a year I lost it. And I think I needed another reminder that, like, Lynn, you just love playing soccer. You do this
Mm.
because you love it. And if you do that, then you will then hopefully everything else falls in line. And if it doesn't, then it's fine. At least you're doing what you love.
Mm.
And so I try to change that mentality. And luckily I was able to get back with them. And now I just have to try to stay.
After Pepperdine, you were drafted by Western New York Flash at the time, which was a club that doesn't exist anymore in New York State. I always thought it was in New York, but then I learned, I think I met Becky Edwards here in Sweden, I think you know her too.
Yep.
But she told me then, no, it's not in New York. It's in New York, upstate New York, and we have a lot of snow. It's cold in the winter.
Well, it is in New York.
Hmm.
It's in the state of New York,
Yeah, the
but
state.
I
Hmm.
think when people think about New York, they think about the big city and
Hmm.
lights and everything, which is like way down here.
Hmm.
And you know, New York, the state of New York is actually much bigger. So the city's down here, and we were way up here,
Yeah.
almost near Canada. So
It
it's
must have been a
definitely.
change for you. I mean, you were a Californian girl or woman,
Oh yeah.
and then you come to the cold.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a shock.
Hmm.
I think it was I've never seen so much snow on the ground that wasn't in the mountains.
Hmm.
It's like, do I need chains on my car? There's like, which you don't.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that. Um, yeah, there's snow everywhere. It was cold all the time. No, really wasn't for me.
Hmm.
I didn't really enjoy it. Didn't really enjoy the place. But I found a lot of like long um, lasting friendships,
Hmm.
and I think that's probably the best thing that's come out of
Yeah, and a lot of people, a lot of players you played with for the Western New York Flash were also your team, are also still your teammates now in North Carolina Courage.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so our first year, did not go as planned. I think that when you think about being a pro, you think of all these like cool things are going to happen. In our first year, we were absolutely terrible.
Hmm.
Uh, we were terrible. I wasn't enjoying it. I think I cried on the phone to my mom like 2 times a week, as well did my other teammates. Like a
Hmm.
lot of us weren't getting along. We just weren't gelling great as a group.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, that wasn't any fun. I don't know if I want to actually do that. I don't know if I want to be a pro, if that's what it is. Um, but like I said, I'm really not a quitter. So I was like, okay, I'll give it another year. And we ended up getting a new coach, Paul Riley, who's our coach
Hmm.
now. Brought in a whole new group of girls. We gelled really well, and he brought like the joy back into the game for us. So the place wasn't necessarily any better, but I really enjoyed going to work each
Hmm.
day. Work, and I really had a lot of fun. And so with that, I think we all bonded a bit more through the hard times, and I
Hmm.
think that kind of brings people closer together sometimes, is going through hard times. And after that year, our team was sold, and we came down here to North Carolina, and the rest is history for now.
But before we go to North Carolina, let's just remember you remember what happened exactly 4 years ago today.
Yeah,
That
we
was, I think,
we
you played Chicago, no, or was it
no,
Washington?
Washington. Yep.
Washington, and you were
So
down 2-1 in extra time, 123 minutes and 33 seconds played. And what happened?
scored a goal with my
Yeah.
head. Um, yeah, that was a crazy game.
Hmm.
Even going back to the game before, playing Portland, going to Portland,
Hmm.
it's like a young group of girls. We had no business being in the postseason at all.
Hmm.
Somehow we got there, and then we ended up beating Portland in dramatic fashion. Um, and then we're going to play Washington, like you said, 4 years ago today in Houston, and we are down. We are down 2-1, and Crystal Dunn has basically ended the game and called game for
Hmm.
them. And I think every single one of us around the field was like, we lost. Oh my gosh, we lost. But you know what? At least we got to the final, but we lost. And funny enough, the day before the game, Paul goes, Lynn, you haven't scored with your head once. Can you
Hmm.
just score with your head? So we have one more final Hail Mary play, and Jess
Hmm.
McDonald has a long throw in. And so everybody's in the box, and she doesn't throw it in long. Jay Hinkle throws it into Jess, and all of us are like, what are you guys doing? You're blowing it. And Jess crosses it in, and I was like, this is my chance. I'm either getting punched in the face, or hitting the ball, or missing completely. I gotta go. And it ended up working out. I
Hmm.
think there's pictures that I still pull up to this day.
Hmm.
And I think these are some of my favorite pictures of all time playing, because we had no business being in the final. We had no business winning, and everybody's face is just in pure shock.
Hmm.
Um, and the fans' faces are in pure disbelief. and, and So yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite moments.
And then Sabrina D'Angelo saved 3 penalties,
And then she goes on to save 3 penalties, and we end up winning. And you know, you look at Sam Mewis's face the whole time, and her hands are on her head, wide open, shocked. I think from the moment I scored that goal to the moment we woke up the next day, she was still having the same shocked face. But yeah, that was an incredible time, and I think that is something that shaped who you are as the courage.
Yeah, Paul Riley, he's a legendary coach. What is so special about? Is he a tough guy, or is he a great motivator? Is he all of it, or what makes him so special?
He's definitely tough. He will let you know when he thinks you could be doing better or when you've messed up. I think that, you know, like I said before, he was somebody who really brought the joy into the game for us originally. And we start every practice with a joke, just to be like a reminder that at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun, supposed to be enjoying ourselves. But then once you cross that line, you switch it on and you get focused. And so everything we do, it takes really sharp focus from like our technical work. It's so complex that you're like, I really have to focus. To his games that we play is like so complex, you're like, I really got to focus. So I think his expectation for us was really high, but what I think has actually happened over time is that we just have had a standard, and that started in Western New York. You know, he was the one who was driving that standard at first and being like, we have to hit this, we have to this. And at that time, like our technical ability was all over the place, but he's like, you can dictate and worry about like your fitness and your work ethic. And so that was something that like was our standard at the time. And then when we came to North Carolina, we held ourselves to the same fitness standard and work ethic. And then we started building pieces of like technical work on top of that. So, but that comes from within in the girls and in the core group, and realizing that at this point, because we've had that standard and we have that identity with us, that anybody that comes in that doesn't really meet that or isn't on board with that, it's very easy to like pick them out and for be like, okay, you're not really the best fit here. So yeah, I would say he was the initial one to say like, we have to have standards, we have to have an identity. Each year we go over like a mantra. But at this point, besides his actual coaching, it's just the standard of the group, and the identity of the group is hardworking, not having any excuses, and really just like being a family, working hard for one another. And
I think every team in the NWSL works hard, but when I see the North Carolina Courage at its best, for example, I think in 2018 when you played Portland, and was that the final? You were so dominating, and Portland is a great team, but you are almost one class above them, above all of the other teams.
Thanks.
At your best.
Thanks. I really just think it's because we've been through hard times together. And we, like I said, we've grown together as a group. We've spent many years together, so we know how each other plays. We're actually really good friends off the field as well, and I think that helps. So it's not only do we work hard for each other on the field, but like once you build a relationship with somebody off the field, you're like, I want to work even harder for my friend. And something that I find very unique that isn't necessarily the same for other teams that I've been on is that everybody really wants somebody to do better. You know, usually when it's a forwards in the same position as mine, you kind of like, oh, I hope she doesn't do it great because I can be on the field, blah, blah. But here it really is, I want you to do great. When somebody else scores, you celebrate for them. And because if they're better, then I'm going to get better, and it's going to push me. And I think that's the mentality and that's here that I don't necessarily think is everywhere else.
I have one quote here that Paul Riley said to you reportedly in 2018. You were an athlete playing soccer. Now you're a soccer player who's an athlete.
Yeah.
What do you say about that? Because I read an article on, I think it was was a website, a US website, where they say about black players that you often, there's a stereotype that you are quick, that you are fast, but you're
Yeah,
not very technical, and that you're not very yeah.
yeah, I would agree. Well, one, he did say that to me, and I thought that was a huge compliment to me,
Hmm.
uh, because, like you said, I think through through my whole career, everybody has always said, "Oh, you're fast. Just kick it in behind. You'll be
Hmm.
fast. Beat them." And so I was never developed in my technical ability or
Hmm.
um, the like a soccer brain. And so I feel like Paul was the first one to be like, "Okay, you are fast, and we're
Hmm.
not going to take that away from you. That is something that's very unique to you. But we need you to use the other parts of your brain because at some point you're not going to be as fast
Hmm.
and you're going to have to adapt." And I remember the first year he came in and we were scrimmaging a college side, and he was asking people questions. He goes, "Lynn, what formation are they playing?" And I had no clue. I was
Hmm.
like, "I have no clue." And he was like, "How can you not know if they're playing a three back, a four back, a five back? Because you're the person who's going to have to manipulate the space." And I was like, in that moment, I was like, huh, I have never had somebody question me,
Hmm.
ask me that. I've never even thought about that. And in that moment, I was like, wow, I really need to grow. I need to start watching the game more. I need to um, X, Y, and Z. And he was right. And so now when I play and when I watch, I'm always like, okay, with the three back, are they four back? Where can I find the space? Technically, I need to do this versus kick and run. Because
Hmm.
you get into the higher you go, maybe they're not fast, but people are smart. They cut off angles, they cut off your run. Um, blah, blah,
Is the
blah.
game changing in the United States? Would you say that? Because a couple of years ago in Tyresö here outside Stockholm, I talked to Tony Gustafsson, who later became the assistant coach for the United States, and Tony told me the US will have to change their way of playing soccer over the
Mm,
years. They cannot keep on with this, like you said, athletic game, kick and rush all the time, up and down the field. That they are fit and the fittest. They have to change in order to stay number one.
yeah, I think that part of it, I think the mentality of the United States is one of the best ever.
Hmm.
If you go down a goal, you're still mentally tough. You'll fight and scrap, and athletically, I feel like right now we are a superior nation in that
Hmm.
sense. I do think that a lot of other nations are catching up.
Hmm.
I also think that technically um, they are also catching up. What I will say is that I think this league and even the style of North Carolina that we play has changed the game. The style North Carolina plays has changed the way this league plays. You
Hmm.
know, pressing, the ability to win the ball back fast, um, and being able to counterattack, but not just kick and run, but like a proper
Hmm.
counterattack. The ability to recover quickly. And so, with all that being said, yes, I do think that technically we'll still have to grow a bit, but if the other team doesn't have the ball or doesn't even have time to build, then it doesn't matter.
And how important is it that some of you now play abroad? I mean, you have many, Kristen Press and Tobin Heath and Sam Mewis, your teammate
Yeah.
from North Carolina, and Rose Lavelle, they are in England, and Emily Sonnet is here in Sweden, and they get new impressions, new forms of training and coaching every day. How important is that?
I think it's important. I think that well, one, if you look at any club side, what makes those clubs unique and really good is the
Hmm.
fact that they have influence from all over. So, like in North Carolina, here we have a lot of American players, obviously, but then you have Dabinia who brings an extra
Hmm.
spark. You go to France and they have a lot of or Lyon, they have a lot of French players, but
Hmm.
then you have like at the time Lucy Bronze who brought another influence there. And so I think when players are going abroad and getting that influence and then bringing it back here, at the core you're always going to be yourself, but
Hmm.
what are new things that you can learn about the game and just different ways of seeing it and like I said, I think you're always going to naturally go back to who you are, but you can
Hmm.
always build on top of um of yourself, and maybe you didn't see the game that way at first, and then you go over there and you're like, oh, that either I like that or I don't like that, but at least it's a new look.
Hmm.
So I think it's important. I also think during this year it's very important for people to get in games, so if that's a way to do it, and it's a good fit for you, then I think that's what needs to be done.
How was your experience in Australia? You played for the Western Sydney Wanderers.
Yeah, I did. It was good. It was cut short, unfortunately.
Hmm.
At the time I wasn't in with the US team, and that's when I
Hmm.
signed my contract there. If I knew I was going to be in with the US team, I probably wouldn't have, just because I don't think it was fair to the club for me
Hmm.
to do that and leave, but I also don't think it was fair to me to fly back and forth. It
Hmm.
just wasn't ideal on either side, but yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought that the girls were amazing.
Hmm.
The style of play, I was pleasantly surprised with the technical ability,
Hmm.
honestly. Um, and I think it's a league that will continue to grow and develop, and hopefully be a huge competing league as well in the future.
Hmm.
Um, and then maybe one day, instead of just people going from one league to the next and the next, it will be either you play in that league or you play in this league.
Yeah, right now it's a little bit crazy because there are some girls playing the whole year, like playing in the US and then moving to Australia, moving back to the US, and then playing like almost 12 months.
Exactly, which I think is it's good to get more games in, but at some point your body does need a rest,
Hmm.
and that's when injuries come into play, which is sad. So at some point, I'm like, everybody needs to get on the same schedule or something. I don't really know.
I saw that you together with your boyfriend Marley is his name. You have a YouTube channel, still active, still on there, and you did great videos. Why did you stop doing those videos?
Oh, I know. We need to get back on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know it's well, we stopped originally because we weren't together, and it
Mm,
was kind of hard to figure out
mm,
how to film and
mm,
creatively put both together. Um, it's so funny that you bring that up, because also we were going to start doing it again this year. I think we had figured it out. He's been doing all the editing, so it's definitely a
mm,
bigger burden on his part. I kind of just take it and like, here, do what you want.
mm.
Um, but then COVID hit, and um, yeah, I'm like, I don't know what to film. Like, you want me to, I've been sitting in my apartment all day.
Yeah, of course. That's a problem.
But we do need
Um,
to feedback. That's you're right. I'll tell him.
just a few more questions. I mean, you have on Twitter, you have 15,600 followers. On Instagram, you have 44,100 people who follow you. So you can use your voice to advocate for certain issues as well in
Mhm,
society. You advocate a lot for equal pay, which is
mhm.
very important to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I'm all for equal rights just across the board.
Hmm.
I think that if if a man and a woman are doing the same job, they should get paid equally. I think that no matter what your skin tone is,
Hmm.
if you're doing the same job, should get paid equally. I think that everybody should have the same basic human rights. So I think if it's a important um, topic. I'm not really the most political person, I would
Hmm.
say, but I really feel like I know this this is can a best guess issue right now, but it's not. If it's anything that has to do with basic human decency and rights, then I will always advocate for that, and use my platform for that, because I everybody should have the same rights. It's
Yeah,
just
I
as
think it's
simple
great.
as
I
that.
just want to ask you when you played Portland in Utah this
Mhm.
summer, both teams took the knee, and what were the reactions to that? Did you get a lot of negative reactions as well, or
Yeah,
just positive?
I think when I look at those pictures, it's like a very powerful statement for
Yeah, you
me.
get goosebumps. I mean, I think it's a very powerful. Exactly.
Yeah, I get goosebumps. I even just got the chills thinking about
Hmm.
it now. I think we got a lot of positive feedback, but we also definitely got a lot of negative feedback, and I think we knew we were gonna get that,
Hmm.
so it definitely wasn't something where we're like, everybody's gonna love this. And also on top of that, it wasn't easy to do. I think a lot of people assume that like that's what I want to be doing is like
Mm,
I want to kneel for my flag. I'm like, no, I wish this wasn't the case. And it, you know, I cried before the game, I cried
mm,
during it, I cried when we were kneeling afterwards. It's very emotional time. And um but to know that that many people and in solidarity, two teams that I think historically have a battle and um a soccer hatred for
mm,
one another, could come together and realize that like this is way bigger than sports. This will
mm,
always be bigger than sports, and we need to use our collective voice that is bigger than an individual voice, and show that we will not stand for inequalities,
mm,
for injustices, and for racism. So that I think is um, the most important thing to me,
mm.
and the most important thing that's come out of this soccer year to me.
Yeah, I don't see that basically as political. I see it more as a human rights question, which is not on any political side. It's just human rights. And the Swedish national team did it. The women's national team, when they played Hungary now in the European qualifying game to the Swedish national anthem, and there were lots of negative reactions, and that was really shocking to me. And even for the players who, but they also knew it, of course, that they would get it. And
Yeah,
mm,
I think that a lot of people view it as a going against your country, you're going against the military, you're going against XYZ.
mm,
And um, you know, I obviously don't know what everybody else's flag
mm,
says or what their national anthem says, but ours says one nation under God,
mm,
and for everybody to have the same basic human rights. And right now, I don't think that's right. And so, how can we be one nation without coming together and realizing that like our nation looks different? Like we
mm,
have a lot of people that look different, and
mm.
everybody should be treated equally. So like you said, it's not a political thing, it's a human rights thing. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we should all be treated like human beings.
You wrote something very beautiful on your I think it was Instagram. The goal is not to say I don't see color. The goal is to say I see you, I accept you, I love your melanin. That I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I grew up seeing people are people.
Mm,
um you know, I think it would be a disservice to for somebody to be like, oh, Lynn, I don't see color when I look at you. I'm like, well, I'm black, I am a
mm,
mixed woman, I'm half black, I'm half white. You should be able to say that. And it shouldn't be something to be hidden, you know.
mm,
um, and that should be all around the world. Like that's what makes the world beautiful, is that we're
mm.
different. If everybody was the same, it would be boring. um, so I think that people need to realize that like we might be different, but
Mm.
it's okay to recognize that we're different, but it is beautiful that we're different.
Let's finish maybe with some music. You told a story when I saw your Instagram talk with the Binya, and I think there you told a story about Sabrina D'Angelo singing "We Are the Champions" in the locker room when you played Chicago, and Paul Riley was really angry at all of you. He said you are just giving them ammo. How important is music
Yeah.
to you and to the teams, to football teams and soccer teams in general?
Oh yeah, music is amazing. It gets you pumped up
Hmm.
before the games, and it's what like after the game, if you have a song that like really brings back all memories and is nostalgic for you. So music is super important. We always have I'm not going to give our secrets away, but we have one song that we always play before every single game. Unless you're in the locker room, you'll never know what it is.
Hmm.
But I think every team either has their one song, their one pump up thing, the thing that really gets them going. And for us, you know, nostalgically, we are the champions. Luckily, in my playing career, we've been able to play it many times. Um, but don't play it unless you are the champions, because Paul Riley will be really upset.
In Pepperdine, you said on your sheet that you like country, R&B, and hip hop. Is that
Yeah.
still the case, or do you have changed your?
You know, it's so funny because I do like country. I like listening into the morning, but that's just because when I was younger, I'd listen into the morning with my mom. And so I think like when I do it, it makes me feel like I'm at home a bit.
Hmm.
Um, but I do like hip hop and like rap a bit more. I like not necessarily like the rap of today, I
Hmm.
guess, but like people who I think are really lyrically gifted and like
Hmm.
poetic with their raps. I really like that, and I listen to like J. Cole and Russ and everybody and a whole bunch of different artists before my games that are like more calming.
Hmm.
Um, I like music. I wish I could go to a concert right now so bad.
Yeah, that's true. That's also something that I miss very badly. Um, Tokyo in 2021, is that a dream that you have? I mean, we don't, nobody knows if there will be Olympic Games, I think, because it's
Yeah,
just not so far away and we still have COVID everywhere. But is that a big dream that you have? Of course.
definitely. I it's been wild. I fell short of making the World Cup team. Looking back, maybe I wasn't in the right mental space. But at the time, I was like, dang, I really felt short. And, I was really proud of myself for continuing to push that year back here with North Carolina. So then when I got my call back in with the US team, I felt like I was doing really well. And I was like, I'm on the brink of making this Olympic team and turning it around. And, COVID hit.
Hmm.
And, um, I think that, I'm trying to view this as, okay, I have another year to mentally prepare, to physically prepare. Um, so yeah, it's definitely an aspiration of mine. Cross my fingers that it does happen, for my sake and people who, like me, this would be our first Olympics, but then also people who this would have been their last Olympics,
Hmm.
who are ready to move on with their careers, but
Hmm.
have been pushed back a year. I think it would be very sad for them to have been pushed back a year and then it not happen and then be like, well,
And soon you're going to the national team to Denver.
say that again.
You're going to Denver soon to the national
Yes,
team, don't you?
yes, on the
Yeah. Is there a huge difference between Paul Riley and Vlatkor Andonovski when you leaving Paul after your game next week? I think you're going to Denver and then you work with Vlatko. Is that a huge difference?
Um, yes and no. I think that Vladko loves the press and like the defensive side of the game, um, which is something that Paul also really likes. The best offense is a good defense,
Hmm.
and so in that sense, it's very similar. The formations are different, so having to change from one formation to the next, and I would say like because of that, like the runs are different. So learning different runs or just playing with different players.
Hmm.
Um, but and I guess their style of coaching is a little bit different. Vlatko is definitely he means business, but I think it comes off sweeter.
But
Than Paul.
apparently you're good in working with both of them, so that's the main and the most important thing.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers that it continues that way.
And I thanks very much, Lynn, for your time and for talking to me. It was a pleasure, and I wish you all the best for your career with the North Carolina Courage and with the national team.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and for I know it's not that late, but for staying up.
Ah,
Um,
do you speak any words of German? Because I'm German actually, and I heard that you studied German in school.
I did. That's so funny. I studied a bit in middle school and in high school,
And in college.
um, and I've lost a lot of it,
Okay.
sadly. But they say if you don't use it, you lose it. But I do know a bit. The hardest part for me is knowing if something is like masculine,
Yeah, of course, that's
feminine,
difficult.
or neutral, and then
Hmm.
and then they all change. I'm like the dare D das, and then it changed to dame, and I'm like, why? Why is it?
Okay, thank you very much for today, and all the best to you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.